Welcome to Performance Driven Living, the podcast where we question everything. We don't tiptoe around tough topics, we walk right into them. Not to provoke, but to get closer to what's real. You might not agree with everything you hear, and that's okay. The show isn't about being right, it's about being real. These conversations are meant to stretch your thinking, challenge assumptions, and spark something deeper. The views shared are those of our guests and may not reflect those of the host or team. And while we dive deep into health, performance, and transformation, this is not medical advice. Talk to your doctor before making changes to your health or lifestyle. Take what lands, leave what doesn't. But whatever you do, don't stop questioning.
We are here at Changing Life and Destiny in Plano, Texas with the Performance Driven Living podcast. I'm your host, Mark Young, and I am here with my friend and guest, Guerry Grune. And Guerry is an interesting character here, and I'm going to be honest. Like, he's a cool guy. This cat's got it together. Duke University professor, all the crazy. Am I correct on that, right?
I'm an adjunct there, yep.
An adjunct, exactly.
Yep.
I know, use the official professor title, and they probably would be like, you're an adjunct.
That's right. That's right.
I came from education. I get it.
You know how that works.
But Guerry, the reason I'm interested in talking with Guerry here, because here's the deal. I'm a Floridian. That's not secret, which means as Floridians, we're in the sun a lot. And I also play beach volleyball. We've had this conversation before,
right,
which means I'm in the sun a lot.
Yep.
I'm also a big fan of being in the sun a lot.
Yep.
I believe that the power of sunlight on your body is just, you can't get that in an artificial way. So I absolutely want that. But
yep,
I also don't want skin cancer.
Right.
I also don't want too much sun exposure.
Right.
And when you're playing 4 hours in the hot sun in the Florida summer in Miami, Fort Lauderdale area,
Right.
sometimes a little bit's a little too much. But
Right.
I understand your product to understand that you're doing sunblock different, because I'll start off by saying one of the things that a lot of people don't realize is they will eat things based on what they would think is palatable. But they also, if I handed you something disgusting, and if I were like, here's my suntan lotion, drink some, right? People be like, what the hell are you talking about? Why would I drink suntan lotion? And yet most people don't understand that if I drink it, my digestive system actually stands a chance at defending my body against something that's bad.
Right.
If I'm rubbing it on my skin, I'm literally absorbing that stuff directly into my bloodstream. Yep. So literally smearing things on your skin causes more damage than if you were to swallow them. Because your gut's used to fighting off toxins. Your gut's used to dealing with that kind of stuff. Your skin doesn't.
True. All true.
So the reality, and I know I oversimplify people's products, and sometimes they're just like, well, I'm so much more complicated than that. I'm like, I'm a marketing guy. I'm going to explain things the way that normal people would perceive them, not the way scientists do. So here's what I want to chat with you about, Guerry, because I know I've given you testimonials in the past, and I've said straight up, when I'm at the beach, right, I use you. Like, right, it is Third Rock, and I'm Third Rock or nothing.
Right.
Because I'm not taking, banana boat, right, and rubbing it all over me. Because here's the bottom line: I wouldn't drink banana boat. I wouldn't do that. Like, the skincare that I use, and I'm turning 50 in a couple months. I told you that. Like, yep, I'm very conscious of the way my skin looks. I want to look good.
Right.
And so I'm very cautious about my skin.
Exactly.
And there's garbage out there.
Lots, yep.
What's the difference? Right. I'm jumping right in.
Okay. So everything you said is absolutely correct. We do make food grade edible sunscreen because we believe that you have to have a non-toxic product, and non-toxic for us means absence of cell death. So that is a real big issue, right? So we've proven that, and I'll go into a little bit more detail.
Yeah. I want the science, because I mean, this whole idea that you are mineral-based, non-nano.
Right.
And normally people are hearing this word nano and thinking that's a good thing.
Right.
But in your world, nano is a bad thing, because that means it actually gets into the skin, but non-nano is a different size molecule.
Right.
Unpack that. You're the scientist.
All
I'm
right,
doing
so
all the science stuff.
all the things you're talking about are sort of the buzzwords for the marketing folks. And so from the science perspective, it's my job, I guess, to decipher that, at least from a scientific standpoint, because, you know, what I like to say is what we do is science, not hype, right? And so, so how did this whole thing start? Is I had two young guys that I surfed with, because I like to surf, you like to play beach volleyball. I like that too, but surfing's how it started. And I had two young guys in their early 20s, different doctors, different times, both got diagnosed with melanoma.
Wow.
And what happened was they went to dermatologists, two different ones. Dermatologists told them the exact same thing. You know, keep surfing, you'll get it again. So at age 20-something, they quit surfing because they were scared, right? They're scared of getting skin cancer again. Now, skin cancer is a whole different ballgame. I'm not a dermatologist. I have a great dermatologist on our board, but what I decided to do is try to develop a non-toxic, cytoprotective, immuno-enhancing, non-endocrine disrupting sunscreen. So that's a lot of information.
It's a lot of buzzwords.
That's
buddy.
a lot.
We're gonna have to unpack those one at a time.
Yes. And then the non-nano part is also interesting. So cytoprotective means it keeps the cells from becoming precancerous or cancerous.
Okay.
There's a lot of discussion about that in the scientific community, about the fact that probably all of us have cancerous cells, and it's your immune system that's trying to keep you
holds them at
strong.
bay.
Exactly. And so my goal was to make a proactive sunscreen, which would actually boost your immune system in the presence of the sun. So let's talk about endocrine disruptors, also known as female mimicking hormones. Well, when I found out about that in 2001 from Margaret Schlumpf, who's a toxicologist at the University of Zurich in Switzerland, and being an ACS, American Chemical Society member for now almost 50 years, I get the front page article every week, something about something. Hers was, are the sunscreens safe? And what she determined by lathering the back of female rats with sunscreens that were available and still are at this time, with the organic actives. So the organic actives are things like methoxycinnamate, avobenzone, oxybenzone, phenoxyethanol. Those are what they call active sunscreens. They really filter out mostly UVB. Avobenzone being the exception, we'll talk about that. And when those female rats' uterus grew abnormally large, she determined that was meaning that they were endocrine disruptors, female mimicking hormones. Fast forward a few years, the Danes, I call them the crazy Danes, they take all the sunscreens off the shelf. Denmark, as we know, is part of the EU. The EU commissioners said, you crazy Danes, what are you doing? You can't do that. So they put the sunscreens back on the shelf. This is 2004. But they did a study. And so this is one of the things you brought up. They did a study, and the study concluded that all of these organic active sunscreens were getting into the bloodstream. And how they were measuring it in the blood plasma and in the urine. Okay. But then at the end of the article, they said, well, you know, the concentration of what gets into the blood is probably only really bad for infants and small children. Okay.
So we can spare them.
Right. And so, and you may remember this, but there was the first real blast of this kind of thing that ever happened was Ralph Nader. So Ralph Nader talked about cyclamates back in the early 60s. There was a product called Tab. And what happened was it was discovered that if mice drank enough Tab, okay, they would develop stomach cancer, right? And probably that's true. Cyclamates were then banned, right? And then we got with saccharin, and God only knows all the other man-made sweeteners, but I won't get off the tangent. I'm just saying, you know, what happens is the food industry and the personal care industry are guilty of one thing, and that is they mass produce. You can't argue with that. Now, are they mass producing good stuff, bad stuff, or something in between?
Mass producing whatever they can market.
Whatever they can market, and whatever is cheap enough to sell, right? So, you know, they say the same old crap in a different bottle or a different label. Well, it turns out the sunscreen market is about a $1.5 billion market. It's not been a great market, honestly, and it's not all we make in our product line, but, you know, talking about the sunscreen, you're exactly right about that, about all the things you said. The non-nano part is become a bigger issue over time. Really, the whole thing about nano-sized particles is that the mineral sunscreens didn't even exist until about the late 80s, early 90s. I found out about it when I was in Australia, got to go over there on business, got to surf, got to stay at Surfer's Paradise, found out the Australians were using titanium dioxide and zinc oxide. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. I come back to the States, and then that article appears in 2001 with Margaret Schlumpf, and I said, I don't want female mimicking more hormones on my body. I'm a man, number one. And it turns out female mimicking hormones are endocrine disruptors. What does that mean? Your immune system is going to be affected if you've got endocrine disruptors, because the endocrine system is what really allows you to flush toxins out of your body, right? It includes all the glands, includes your kidneys and your bladder and
system,
you name it, right? So endocrine disruptor, I'm thinking, well, if it's disrupting the endocrine system, that doesn't sound good, because now all the toxins that are supposed to be coming out of me are being accumulated inside because it's disrupting that system. Forget about the fact that it's female hormone. That's bad enough.
Well, yeah,
and,
you don't want your uterus to grow too large.
That's right. Exactly. So I said, well, wait a minute. So then I decided, well, if I'm going to make this product, I've got to come up with something that is zinc only. And because zinc oxide happens to be the best UVA, UVB absorber of all the ones that are allowed by the FDA. The FDA considers sunscreen a drug because it's being applied to your largest organ, which is your skin. And of course, you can really tell a lot about the health of people by looking at their skin. Your skin's your largest organ. If you keep your skin healthy, probably your insides are probably doing pretty well.
I always use the phrase that when people are having an issue, like my sister's got this terrible thing going on with her face right now.
Oh.
It sounds like a brother thing to say, but but I keep telling her, like, she's, wanting to get every kind of dermatological thing done. I'm like, you've got an inside problem.
Right. Something else is going on.
Your skin is projecting what's going on in the inside.
I would agree 100%. I think your skin reflects what your inside health is.
Absolutely.
As well as the fact that you want to keep your skin healthy to protect your inside as well.
Sure.
It goes both ways, right? Because we're systems. I'm a chemical engineer, PhD chemical engineer. I'm not a physiologist. I'm not a dermatologist. I'm not a medical doctor, but I do know one thing: garbage in is garbage out.
100%.
Right? And if you want to consider the human body a black box, which is how us chemical engineers think, black box, garbage in, garbage out, then I said, well, I want really good stuff in, because I want to make sure that in the presence of the sun, which is the biggest free radical generator on the planet, or off the planet, right?
Yeah, right.
I want to make sure that what I'm doing is protecting my skin health, right? And so to do that, I want to build my immune system. And I'm thinking these other sunscreens, these additives that are endocrine disruptors, and they're, by the way, not just the actives, the inactives that they put into the sunscreens are just as bad or worse as well, including parabens and all kinds of other emulsifiers that are mostly toxic. And I'm thinking to myself, holy cow, I'm putting this stuff on my skin and my endocrine system's being disrupted, which means I'm not getting rid of the toxins, so immune system is being depressed.
And you're putting additional toxins in.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's not just that you're a negative because you're not eliminating the way you should. You're actually pouring the toxins in and stopping the toxins from being removed. It's like you're creating a one-way prison system.
Yeah. So the black box is filling up with toxins.
Correct.
So I'm like, okay, I gotta reverse the trend here. I gotta take that and make it a non-toxic, non-endocrine disrupting system that is also proactive. So how did I do that? Well, it turns out I was working with a kinesiologist chiropractor who does muscle testing. So he said, well, Gary, I'm very interested in this. He says, let's muscle test everybody on everything. So we took every ingredient that was off the shelf that everybody was making sunscreen with, and we tested it, muscle test. And then I said, well, muscle testing's a little, wonky maybe. I said, let's do something more. His first patient is a guy named Dr. George Clark, and he came up with an assay, a bioassay. And the bioassay is using what fireflies use, which is an enzymatic luciferase enzyme, and he put it in a bioassay. And what happens in the bioassay is they determine cell death that way. And when cells die, the light dims. So it's a photobiological assay, right? And so they can measure down to 10 to the minus 16th power if something is killing cells or not. So they can measure down to essentially zero whether something's toxic or not toxic. Well, his proteges and his colleagues decided we were going to publish the results in the Journal of Toxicology in 2005. Well, I couldn't go to that conference because it was my daughter's 5th birthday that week. So I couldn't go to San Diego and present, but they did. And L'Oreal came up to them and said, we're glad you didn't put our product in there. So they took all the products they could from Walmart at the time off the shelf, and tested them for endocrine disruption, as well as all the individual components. There was a 1-to-1 correlation between muscle testing, something that weakens, strengthens, or has no effect, and the toxicity of those, all of those items that we, including the sunscreens. 1-to-1 correlation, including a Corning oil product that was made specifically to be non-toxic. And when I was exposed to it for muscle testing, it didn't strengthen me, it didn't really weaken me, it sort of had no effect. Turns out when we ran it in this test, the luciferase enzyme photobiological test, what happened was we measured that it was actually toxic at 10 to the minus 12th power, meaning that there was still a slight amount of toxicity.
Nothing that you noticed.
Exactly. So we don't use silicone oil. And I then was hired by Burt's Bees to make their product for them because we patented our formulation. Well, Burt's Bees sold out to Clorox in 2007 for $987 million. And they decided not to make sunscreen anymore and canceled my contract. But, you know, things happen. That's a business issue, different than the science. So getting back to the science, what you and your folks should know is about the fact that the FDA really regulates SPF, sun protection factor, right? So when you or I are out in the sun for, let's say 20 minutes to make things simple, and you buy an SPF 30 product, why are you buying SPF 30? Well, you don't want to burn. Well, SPF 30 is sun protection factor 30. So 30 times 20 is 600 minutes of protection. 600 minutes is 10 hours, right? Okay, 10 hours of protection. 10 hours of protection from what? From burning. Why, what are you protecting? You're protecting UVB only. So SPF only measures in the UVB range, and very few people, hardly any, know that.
Okay, so
right?
I want to unpack that because here's a little known fact. I actually used to own a tanning salon many years ago. And yet one of the things that I would deal with all the time, and I was a silent partner for a long time, but I would spend a lot of time there, and anything that I got involved in, I wanted to understand better than anybody. And this concept of UVB versus UVA light versus you know, infrared light, UVC, and so on and so forth. It's UVA and UVB that really affect the skin more than anything. And I'm going to oversimplify things because that's what I do. And that is UVB light. What most people don't understand is that UVB is actually the rays, and those are shortwave ultraviolet lights. That are actually, they trigger the production of melanin in the skin. And melanin is actually like a pink secretion. And that pink secretion starts to move to the surface of the skin with the intention of catching any light that starts to penetrate the skin to stop it from going any deeper.
Perfectly described. UVA
light, which people don't entirely understand, is long wave ultraviolet light. And long wave ultraviolet light, UVA, actually, as it penetrates, is caught by this pink secretion called melanin. The oxygenation process of melanin is what turns it brown. So net in effect, what we're looking for out of sun tanning is all of this melanin production. That's what a lot of people in the tanning business call that the base tan. I'm going to get short-term doses of UVB, which starts priming that pump for UVB, that melanin production. Then exposure to UVA triggers the oxygenation process. Oxygenation process turns us brown. None of that is wrong.
I 100% agree.
Like scientifically, yes, but I mean, even the use of UVA and UVB to trigger a melanin response in the body doesn't hurt the body.
Agreed.
There's no damage being done to you by triggering melanin and tanning. And that is one of the things that absolutely drives me crazy is people with this tanning is bad, you're going to end up with damage. No. Tanning is how I've described it to people as the ultimate biohack. Because here's what I'm going to say. From a biohack perspective, we use systems in the body to trigger a wanted result. Sometimes that's greater health. Sometimes that's greater brain optimization. Sometimes it's an aesthetic. I am hacking my body's defense mechanism to create an aesthetic that I find attractive.
100%. Everything you said is correct.
So in hacking my body's defense mechanism, I stimulate it with UVB light. I trigger this pink secretion, which starts to move to the surface of the skin. I expose it to UVA light. All of this is good. I get the aesthetic I want. I've not overdone it. Here's my problem with the tanning industry in large. Okay, now, and I'm not even getting into like DHA and dehydroxyacetone.
Okay.
And the ways that we can actually artificially trigger these types of things.
There's other things you can do.
That's not related to the sun specifically.
Right, and it's not a tanning bed issue.
It's not a tanning bed issue.
Right.
It's more of a spray tan issue.
Yes, yes.
When we get into this type of exposure and the browning,
Right.
okay, I get the aesthetic that I want.
Right.
But the sunblock industry has stopped all of that from happening. And in fact, I would say when sunblock is created to stop the what do I want to call it? The absorption of UVB light.
Yes, UVB light.
Now all I'm getting is all the other types of light.
That's right.
And I haven't triggered my production of melanin.
That's right.
And because I haven't triggered my production of melanin, my body's defense stopped.
Well,
Like,
at least is diminished, let's just say.
Sure.
Yes.
Not stop, because we all have melanin that
Right.
exists on a regular basis anyways.
Right.
But my body's defense system, I'm almost turning it off.
That's definitely, and in there's definitely a problem there, and I can
Down-regulating it. Maybe that's a better phrase.
Down-regulating.
I'm down-regulating my
agree.
body's defense
Yep.
because my body's defense is triggered by UVB.
100% agree.
So I block the UVB.
Yes.
And when I block the UVB,
Yes.
now I've turned off
Yes.
the triggering mechanism
Yes.
that turns on my defense.
Yes.
Why in the world is this okay?
Okay, so exactly what I was going to just get into, but I'll talk about it in a little bit different way than you did.
I'm also
because-
going to say, you're sitting there like, why the hell do you know this much about suntans, right?
Right, exactly right. Well, you were in the sun booth business.
I was.
You were in the sun tanning business,
Yes.
whatever you want to call it. We used to call it. I was at a
Fake
photobiology conference, and and I was there with Dr. Bernstein. Dr. Bernstein is de facto probably the #1 dermatologist on the East Coast, now retired, but still on our board. And he called. There was a presentation there called "Tanning Your Hide," right? And so the thing about what you're talking about in the tanning booth industry is, as long as it's done properly, you're controlling that process, right? If you're outside playing beach volleyball, you're not controlling that process. So if you have a bright day and you're getting reflection from the beach water, from the ocean, from the sand, all that, you're getting double, triple, quadruple doses, and you're getting it a lot, and it's not controlled. You're not.
And usually at areas that you don't normally get tanned in,
100%.
because you are getting, like, you've got more susceptible areas. And I'm not
100%.
talking about adult resorts.
Yeah.
I'm talking about when you're out there and you don't have a shirt on and you're
Right.
getting it in
Right.
areas like under your arms.
Right.
Or on
Any
the back
place
of your
the
neck.
skin is thin, and any place you don't usually get UV radiation.
Correct.
So let's talk about UVB for a second, because you brought that up.
Yeah.
Okay. So SPF, sun protection factor, UVB. So if you and I being outside 20 minutes in Miami Beach playing volleyball or me surfing, whatever it is, right? 20 times 30. So SPF 30 means sun protection factor 30. So 30 times 20 is 600 minutes. That's 10 hours of protection. 10 hours of protection from what? UVB.
Right.
Okay. So if you're not starting to burn, your body's not telling you get the hell out of the sun. You got all the vitamin D you need for the day. You're starting to turn pink. You got everything you need from the sun. Now it's time to either get out of the sun, but of course, in 20 minutes, we're just warming up on the beach. I'm getting in the water. You're going to play volleyball.
Yeah, we just finished warm up.
Yeah, we just showed up, right? And so by definition, after those 20 minutes that we start to turn pink or start to burn, we're quote unquote overexposed to UVB. Now the question is, what about UVA? Well, it turns out that the sunscreen industry, which you can't call it sunblock anymore as of the 2011 FDA monograph, but that's a whole different story, right? You have to call it sunscreen.
Yep.
All the sunscreen components I talked about, the organic sunscreens, they're transparent. The only ones that aren't completely transparent is zinc and titanium dioxide.
Right.
And the reason that they're not transparent is because they're pigments, they're metal oxides, and what happens is when you nanosize them, they become much more transparent. And that's how that whole thing came about. In fact, the guy who wrote the patents on that, or got the patents on that, sold his IP to BASF and became a billionaire just by figuring out how to make zinc oxide and titanium dioxide nano-sized, right? Anyway, so the sunscreen industry adopted that because now all of a sudden you didn't have to look like Bozo the Clown. You didn't have to look like the lifeguards who put the white stuff on their nose, which is pure zinc oxide. But it works. Why do they put it on their nose? Because it absorbs UVA and UVB. And why on their nose? Because the nose has very, very thin skin. And a lot of people get skin cancer problems right there because that's an area that's very sensitive. And, any place else on your face, really. So, so now what you're doing is you're filtering out the UVB, but what about the UVA? So the UVA, as you said, long penetrating rays, those are the ones that when you're overexposed, cause DNA damage, aging, wrinkling, and if you're like my buddies who are 20-year-old surfers who probably ate at McDonald's a lot, their immune system was depressed, skin cancer, right? So the onset of melanoma, that type of thing. Now, with UVA, it turns out avobenzone is the #1 UVA absorber that's put into sunscreens. It turns out it doesn't do as good a job as zinc oxide, and it's an organic substance, which when UV light hits it, it splits avobenzone into little fragments. And you may have heard 2 years ago, it was a big deal, benzene found in sunscreen. Where did the benzene come from? It came from things like avobenzone, benzophenone, that literally are long-chained versions of benzene. Okay, so benzene's just a monomer, right? Which is just a little phenyl group. These are multiple phenyl groups with carbon and hydrogen, making them organic with oxygen. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen is the definition, right? And so the avobenzone, when UV light hits it, it's a great UVA absorber until you split the molecule. And what happens is you're left with residual benzene. Okay.
Right.
So you and I grew up in a time when we said, maybe, at least our parents were already saying it, because my parents were using suntan lotion. That's what they used to co-op.
Yep.
It was SPF 4. It was either mineral oil or coconut oil or a combination of yes. And it smelled good.
Yeah.
And you loved Hawaiian Tropic. It smelled good, but it wasn't really very useful. And yes, it would help you tan a little bit, because if you didn't overexpose yourself, the oils would get into the skin and they would help, like the booth business that you were in, the sun booth business, so you were in a sun tanning booth. It would help produce the melanin, which made you look tan and healthy and everything.
Absolutely.
So getting back to the UVA, so the only thing that really absorbs UVA of all the sunscreen additives that are allowed by the FDA is really zinc oxide. Even titanium dioxide in the UVA spectrum, which is about 280 or 290 nanometers to about 400 nanometers, that's the wavelength of UVA. In that wavelength, really the only thing that really works is zinc oxide. But here's the big problem, and here's where we're different. So zinc oxide is a metal oxide. When you take zinc oxide and you put it into water, it becomes zinc hydroxide, which is a salt. Well, that doesn't sound so bad, except for one thing. Zinc hydroxide does not absorb in the UVA range like pure zinc oxide does. So when the lifeguards put their stuff on their nose, what my goal was is to make what that is and make it into a lotion. Because nobody's going to put pure zinc oxide paste on their skin, right? Except lifeguards. So that's what we've done. Now, how do we accomplish that is a whole different ballgame.
I think it's important for people to see, because there's such a suspicion right now in the marketplace of everything that we're putting on ourselves. And I'll go back to our earlier conversation, and a friend of mine always refers to the skin as the second mouth. That, whatever you're putting on your skin, you're literally digesting.
Right.
Except you lose the defense of the gut.
Yep.
You're putting it right into the bloodstream.
Right.
And it's why, like I said, when I'm out playing, I will put third rod. Now, I don't put it all over the place because I've got a good defense. I'm a naturally darker person anyway, so I have more natural melanin production in my skin.
Put it in the places which are sensitive and which are going to be.
I'll put it on my ears. I'll put it on my nose. I'll put it a lot of times like under my eyes. I'll put it in those areas, and sometimes I'll go put it on a little bit after I've been playing for a while, right?
True, yeah, because you get a little bit of vitamin D. You get all your vitamin D.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Now I'm willing to go ahead and block a little bit more than that. I'll put it on my shoulders, actually, because that's an area that I burn easily.
Sure, most people.
But I'll put that stuff on, and here's what I appreciate about it, though. Is like, does it have a bit of a coat to it?
Yep.
Sure.
Yep.
You see it.
Yep.
It's not invisible.
Right.
And that's okay, because that actually gives me some reassurance that it's there. Pardon me.
Yep.
I'm also not wondering if I hit all of the places, because I can actually see where it is, which I actually find beneficial.
Right.
But at the same time, I'm not worried about it absorbing into my bloodstream.
Interesting. So, yeah, go ahead.
And I was going to say, and that to me is probably one of the biggest benefits of your product is this non-nano type thing. Like the product itself is a large enough molecule that it's not transdermal.
Right. So the question is, how do we do that?
Sure.
Right.
Go ahead and answer.
So what happens with zinc oxide, as I mentioned, is it becomes zinc hydroxide in water. So there's a way to stop that from happening. Turns out zinc oxide cannot become zinc hydroxide at a pH of 9.5 to 10.5. So we control the pH so that we keep it between 9.5 and 10.5. Not an easy feat. And we do that by chelating with L-arginine.
Interesting.
So the zinc oxide really is bonded with L-arginine. And L-arginine, as you probably know, is an amino acid, right? So I knew that was healthful, and it would get my pH where I wanted. That's one thing.
L-arginine is also a precursor for nitric oxide.
It is. It is. So, you know, again, trying to make a proactive sunscreen, right? So the thing about when you put it on is you not only want to feel good, but your body actually is absorbing some L-arginine, which is not a bad thing in the presence of the sun. Again, our whole idea was build the immune system in the presence of the sun, don't deplete it.
That's amazing.
So the zinc oxide molecule is now growing. So we don't use nano, we use non-nano zinc oxide, which is about 200 microns. And then we chelate with L-arginine to make this zinc oxide paste, which of course we patented because I do patent work for a living, as you know. So that is the composition that you're putting on your skin. Now the FDA only allows up to 25% by weight of any one of these components, zinc oxide or titanium dioxide. So we use 23.5% to get SPF 35. And of course, SPF again is only about UVB. What our formulation does is it absorbs across the spectrum equally, UVB and UVA, to the point where it's identical with the zinc oxide, and it's never becomes zinc hydroxide, which is a problem with UVA absorption. Only UVA, not UVB. Only UVA absorption, which are the long penetrating rays, which if you're overexposed, not in the suntan business, but because you're going to be controlled, but if you're overexposed like us on the beach or wherever we are, biking, whatever we're doing, you're going to be overexposed after, let's say 20, 30, 40 minutes, whatever. Then all of a sudden, you know, you've got DNA damage that's starting to occur. And if the DNA damage occurs and you mutate enough cells,
you get cancer.
Then you got problems.
Absolutely.
Right?
Gary, I love this stuff. Obviously, I could talk about this stuff all day. I love the opportunity to talk with you, obviously. But I encourage people who are listening, if you've never heard of Third Rock, they've got a lot of different products. We focused on sunblock
just on the sunscreen,
but the reality is that's the one that I love the most. I'm sure there's others that are even better, but it's the one I use most often. I encourage you, check out the show notes. You'll actually see links to Third Rock. Check out Guerry Grune's information online. Learn more about this. Educator by nature, college professor,
for sure, we
scientist.
both are.
That's true. So yeah, guys, check it out, and I encourage it, especially for my Floridian friends. Make sure that we're staying safe. See ya.